Hey everybody, welcome to the episode of Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Chris Shang. Today we've got Miloš, who's the co-CEO and co-founder of heyData. Thank you so much for joining us from Berlin.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. Yeah, my name is Miloš. I'm the founder of heyData, and what we actually do is making compliance easy for everyone. And with everyone, we specifically mean small and medium-sized businesses, because a few years ago, my co-founders and me worked in very sensitive industries like insurtech, fintech, even digital health, and these kind of topics. And as we're all based in Europe, we had to follow many compliance setups and frameworks back then. And we're wondering, I mean, we were all working in well-funded or very big organizations, but how is actually the majority of companies doing that, which is especially in Europe, but also globally looking, is consisting of SMBs. And, as I guess every founder does, we started just talking to smaller and medium-sized companies, like the average one from 20 to 50 employees, and asked them like, hey guys, how do you comply actually with the, for instance, topic of data privacy, which is like a huge thing in Europe and becoming more and more globally. And what we heard from all of them is actually that they honestly don't know how to cover it properly. They try different ways, like with law firms, agencies, even getting people internally on board to cover the topic, but the result was very blurry. And in the end, what was missing is the peace of mind, what you actually need in this kind of topic, where you're always afraid that kind of the regulators or state steps on your back and punishes you in whatever way. And based on that experience, actually, we started helping companies out. I mean, Daniel and me, we both studied at a university called WHU, which is very famous, at least in the European market, for starting up businesses a lot. And then we reached out to founders there to ask them if we can support more or less pro bono. And they were like crazy happy. They were like, okay, guys, you really want to do that, which is such a painful topic. We hate it. But the point is like we hated it as well. And we knew how big the pain was. And they were like, yeah, maybe you can do that differently. And I mean, honestly, these first companies were our design partners. And we built a solution completely bootstrapped over a year, and launched in mid 2020 our SaaS solution for the SMBs, and started growing it over time since then. And we see that our approach of making it kind of simple, understandable for everyone in the company, even without legal or let's say IT security knowledge, can run through our audit process, can run through the steps which need to be taken to get to a compliance standard. We see that that works really well, because now we have about 1,500 clients, and not only in Germany, but all over Europe and UK, US, quite a lot, like especially US companies who want to enter the European market, and even going up to Japan and Southeast Asia. So this kind of approach at least shows us that simplicity, seamlessness, taking over the task instead of telling customers what they need to do, is the right way to do for the SMB market. I mean, enterprise is quite different, but the small and medium-sized ones, they really want to take the pain away from them, and usually don't want to dig deeper, because in the end it's not a crucial piece for the business, but they need it as they grow and becomes a continuously bigger threat if they don't cover it properly and grow with it. And yeah, I mean, based on that experience where we started, it was deliberately one single framework. We went into GDPR first, because that was kind of the biggest topic and most known for the companies. On that kind of process and how the software works and the approach, we looked into other frameworks like the whistleblowing direction. Nowadays, we do even NIS2, ISO, also the EU AI Act. I mean, in the US, AI is not that much regulatory restricted, but in Europe, it is quite a big topic. And especially the AI startups now popping up all over the place. They need to cover that because the regulation kicks in next year. And so step by step, we kind of build this holistic framework where anything related to data privacy and compliance can be covered by us. I mean, that's in a nutshell what happened over the last 4 years, I would say.
Got it. And is there an area of the world you're primarily focused on, or what was your initial go-to-market like, and how did that evolve or change as you
Yeah,
started to grow the business? Yeah.
so as I said, like we looked into the privacy space first, so which covers the GDPR as a main topic, and we entered that on purpose because it was the one kind of regulatory obligation which was covered by media the most. So the awareness and the kind of public was the biggest for that topic, and also it was known that especially small companies, like even with 10 employees, need to have some documentation and processes in place. So we knew that, very small businesses kind of need to cover that. And usually they don't have the money to pay, big time lawyers to do that topic.
Sure.
And so that was kind of the starting point, because we knew we do not need to educate the market further on because there was already quite a level on it. And then it was just to frame the storyline for the ICP which we want to cover. As I said, like putting our USPs in front, as I said, the seamlessness, the speed, we take over your task, you just kind of provide us a few information throughout it, and then you're done. And that we optimized over time. And what we used in the beginning and is still working really well in that sense, because as I said, it is a pain topic. It's not like a marketing or sales topic, how you can grow your business, or a huge cost cutter. It's like a must-have. Like you need to have an insurance for some cases, so you need to have compliance. And then we thought back then, actually, that topic is difficult to sell in a classic outbound approach, because, yeah, maybe you're telling companies you need that, but it's not the right time. So we focus to get a really good inbound system, and to further on educate companies which come to our funnel. But at the same time, as I said, it is a pain solving topic. Once a
Sure.
person is looking for it, they actually want to sign and solve it. You don't want to open that box like every quarter again. You just want to get it done. And then we
Yeah.
we had quite a good approach for the whole inbound topic then.
Got it. Makes sense. Um, Going back to maybe like when you guys initially started the business, what was the epiphany moment for the idea to go and make this, an idea that you wanted to turn into a sustainable, viable business? And then, yeah, I guess like as somebody who has also worked corporate and then deciding to take on that founder hat, like you end up wearing a lot of different hats, and it ends up becoming more than whatever the core competency is, and you end up having to learn a lot of different things along the way. What was that experience like for you? Did you have any expectations going in? Did those expectations change? Did it not meet? Did it exceed? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with the beginning of your question. So, I mean, especially Daniel and I, we were living back then in Munich. We both went to the university we went to because at one point we wanted to start our own business, whatever that would be. Like, is it
Yeah.
a self-run consultancy or like $1 billion tech startup? But that was in the core of the decision going to that specific university. And when we worked in our corporate jobs, we had our regular sports session on the weekends where we also get some lunch together and, or some beers. I mean, Munich is like a perfect place to do that. And we're chit-chatting about where the market goes, what topics appear. And I can clearly remember that moment. I worked actually at a telemedicine company from Canada entering the German market, and we had a big law firm on our side to support us on the privacy topic. And I remember it was a process taking us about 6 months, and it still wasn't clear where we're heading to. And we got the bill, which was close to 120,000 euro back then, a huge amount of money for legal services. And then at the same time, knowing we are not at the end yet, and a person quite knowledgeable needs to support that further process, and it will be more and more costly. That was like a moment when we were just wondering, how is that possible? And at the same time, Daniel worked at an insurtech where he did an ISO certification with the Big Four company, and also a multi-month project, very unclear how it ends, also super costly, taking lots of resources inside of the business. So slowing down, like limiting the pace of going forward as a growing business. And that was kind of these two situations very close together. Well, a point when we were, okay, this is a big thing. This is a real pain point. Let's look into that further, because other things are other companies, even what we see in the market. I worked also at venture builders and incubators where you test out many ideas, but most of them are kind of nice to have or niche solution. But here we had two things which gave us the kind of the confidence to follow down that road. Is it is a topic more or less touching any kind of business in any industry, and at the same time it is a must-have topic. It is not nice to have, it's not an add-on. And as these two things came together, we were like, okay, let's try that out. Now, coming to the second part of your question, like moving from this kind of corporate environment to the founder seat. I mean, for me at least, it didn't feel that much of a change because I always looked into the venture capital or startup side. So I was very familiar with these kind of topics. And as I grew in my career, there was always the point when I asked myself, okay, this decision I would have taken differently, or why are we doing it that way? I mean, it's clearly not the best path where we are right now as a business. And always this feeling, yeah, I'm supporting the driver, kind of, I'm the sidekick, but I'm never in the driver's seat. I never make the decision going left, right, or wherever it goes. And there was this big wish to take this position, and to be frank, that was fulfilled completely, especially in the beginning, because there were no investors, there were no further stakeholders. It was like my co-founders and me sitting at a table, sometimes even at our previous jobs at night, because we had an office environment there, and working on this idea how to help companies out. And I would say that actually changed more into the direction that nowadays we feel less in the driver's seat, because there are so many stakeholders and shareholders at the table who have different agendas, whose kind of agendas you need to keep in mind when making your own decision making process, where sometimes you even follow decisions you wouldn't do it your own, but you do it just to keep up with the pace because some others made it, in the departments and so on. And I would say that nowadays it actually, at the size we're in, like we're 50 people, spread all over the place, um, that it doesn't feel always being in the driver's seat, but there are still situations like the big decisions where again we take this seat and feel, the engine kind of below us, that we can really steer it left or right. Um, yeah, and also what I would like to add is about expectations, and what we thought about it is, um, although I was following this kind of founder environment for many years before I took the position myself, the experience of looking from the outside compared to being the founder is very different, and it's a kind of an emotional growth development you have over time. At least for me, and my co-founders felt like that, because you kind of, yeah, we're founding this business, and it's fun and we can try out things, but when you start hiring people and these people depend on you and that you pay them the salary and you have some kind of obligation, then you immediately realize, oh, this is not just a game. This is not something you can try out. You have to take responsibility, and it's a very different kind than you had before. And information cannot always be shared fully transparent, but you need to keep in mind the right timing, the right narrative, the right tonality. And this is something what was honestly quite new to me, especially looking at all the different stakeholders which are now at the table. So I guess that was the most unexpected development. And in the beginning, it was more of an anxiety to do that. And now it's like the thing where I see the biggest growth, because I think in other positions, I wouldn't have the possibility to get this experience and to grow with them in that sense.
Yeah, fair. Very cool. And in terms of like, you mentioned a little bit about personal growth too, right? Like, as just naturally being a part of that journey. Uh, what has been some of the things that you've learned about yourself throughout the process that, again, you may not have been exposed to had you not made that decision?
Mm, so what I learned about myself are, I think, two main things. So one thing is that that I kind of need to control a little bit my temper. In previous jobs, that was something what actually my bosses loved about me, that if I have to do a project, I, kind of run through the wall and just make it happen, whatever it takes. But now in the founder position with different departments and different layers of management, I can't act in my position that way, because people are sometimes threatened or anxious, or they just stop working because they're afraid to do something wrong. And I needed to learn that this is kind of my temper, or my part of my character, and that I need to control that, and sometimes to let it happen. But when I'm fully aware that this is the right time to do so. And that was very difficult for me, because this is something I did quite intuitive, and I didn't thought about it because I was always outcome oriented, and this attitude helped me a lot in my career previously. But now in this founder seat, it changed quite a lot, and having to find not only to understand that this is not only let's say a positive or benefit, or which I'm having, but can also have negative consequences, was the first step of understanding it. And then finding mechanism to see when I move in that direction and how to control it, and like give the right balance to it. That was an even bigger task afterwards. So that's, I guess, one piece I had to learn. And the other one, as I said, is this kind of transparency, and when you tell what in what way. Before that, I always had the feeling in other companies I worked with, and I always worked very close with C-level. So many informations were shared with me primarily beforehand, looking at the whole team. And I was always wondering, why is that the case? And in many cases, I thought it would actually make sense to be fully transparent, so everyone is on the same page, and then we can run in this or that direction. But now in the founder position, it happened actually to me in the early days that, I shared also quite bad or negative feedback with everyone. And then you take out the pace of movement, and people focus more on that one information I as a founder share with them than on their projects and the department that they're working in. And then I realized, wow, this has such a big impact. I need to evaluate before I share things, and I actually need to think about how I'm telling that. I can't tell, oh, we lost, I don't know, 10 customers recently between two coffees with two people, and not sharing with everyone properly. But some information needs to be prepared, kind of in a speech, and then share bits by bits. And this is also something I wasn't aware of, that it's that important at that size. I usually thought, okay, this is something, you know, bigger corporations do, and this is part of the CEO job. But honestly, it is important from the point when you have more than 5 people on board, because then you immediately have kind of the first layer between the core and the first people supporting the core. And that's the point when you need to start thinking about it. And yeah, that was kind of a challenging thing for myself to grow into that role and be constantly aware of that.
Yeah, interesting. Um, as we're kind of wrapping up on time here, kind of, you know, what are your expectations with where heyData is now? You know, you mentioned, you know, AI, and that kind of becoming another, thing this year in terms of compliance. But yeah, every country is a little bit different. Every region is also a little bit different in terms of like what that compliance means. So how do you stay up to date with that? And then what is, you know, what is the, yeah, what are you noticing in terms of that space? Because that's something I feel like, at least in the States, isn't as restrictive as, you know, the EU is, which I actually personally think is a bad thing. I especially with AI, I think there's a lot of people that end up interacting with it that don't necessarily know the amount of privacy that's being invaded, or like the data that they're actually giving up. So what are your kind of thoughts on that from a business perspective, but then also perhaps from like a more personal hot take?
Yeah. I mean, from a business perspective, and this is really my personal thinking about it. I think this whole compliance topic, especially privacy and IT security, is a growing topic. Still, a few years ago when we started, I thought it is more about getting to a level, and then it is about getting the different companies by, you know, where they stand, like are they tech or are they legacy, to that standard. But as I'm looking in the last few years, and especially the movement with AI, actually more and more layers appear, because it becomes essential. These tools which we're using day by day are in such sensitive industries that you kind of need compliance frameworks, and actually the states or the regulators are sometimes too slow to understand the changes and to create the proper regulation for the case. So another thing what I'm thinking is going to happen in the future, many frameworks which we are right now having will change significantly based on the development which we're having now quarter after quarter. And therefore, I think for a business like ours, but also, let's say, more traditional ones like agencies and law firms, there will be quite a market to tackle. The only thing would I think here, this kind of one solution covers all, that will most probably stop if you don't get to a size to be able to cover it, because now every industry gets their very specific ones. I mean, we just as an example, we see it a lot in the automotive industry, because they have a huge amount of getting more specific regulations. And usually a generalist company doing a service like ours cannot go that into depth, and they need it. So I guess there will be more and more kind of specialized providers for the different industries in that on a global scale. Now, looking at the differences between the countries, I mean, we ultimately focused on the German market, but through our inbound activities, got more and more international clients. I mean, right now we already have clients from 23 countries, and the US is quite interesting, because especially growing businesses from the US or mid-sized businesses to smaller corporation, when they look into where to expand, usually Europe as a generalistic market is second, because it's such, you know, in the end, a big market compared to so many others. Basket sizes are appropriate in most of the countries. And when they start kind of growing, they look into that space, and then they understand that some standards are needed, otherwise they cannot sell their service or product whatsoever. So I guess you're completely right. To kick off a business in the US from a regulatory perspective will be easier and is still very easy. But at one point, when you want to grow internationally, then you need to cover that. And even companies from the US looking at the Asian market, we see that the most important Asian markets, for instance, like Singapore and so on, they actually comply to the standards of Europe because they said, we don't want to, reinvent the wheel. You guys kind of have this development since the 70s, so let's take
Yeah,
your framework and adapt it. Um, so for international companies, this will be in the end essential to cover. And now looking at the product development, yeah, I already mentioned the EU AI Act, and I personally think that also other markets and even North America will follow with some frameworks because some AI solutions are touching the healthcare industry, the insurance industry, financial industry, even defense. And I guess at one point it will become even a little bit too dangerous to just, collect the data, work with it, and create more or less autonomous buildings which can't be controlled anymore. So I'm not sure how that will look if EU AI will actually be an initial idea how the US wants to build a framework around it, but I'm pretty sure something like that will happen in the future.
very cool. Well, and then I want to say thank you so much for taking the time today and sharing your insights around your founder journey, as well as what you guys are building over at heyData, and then what you're seeing in the trends and themes to come here as a lot of changes are happening.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a really nice discussion, and yeah, have a great day, I would say, or great stuff for the weekend.
Same for you.